So I couldn't help but notice that you've clicked on and are presently listening to an episode of Paranormal Patio. That's great. Thanks a lot for listening. We appreciate your support. And if you want to keep listening, you can find a whole bunch of other episodes on Spotify and wherever else you can get podcast episodes from, except for Apple. It's a personal decision. You can also find everything that you need to know about the show on paranormalpatio.com. We're on social media pretty much everywhere, I think. Just search for Paranormal Patio, and if we're on there, you'll find it. Also, we do have a Patreon, so head on over to patreon.com/beyondthepatio. You can get early access to episodes, tons of bonus content, monthly live streams, all kinds of good stuff. Thanks for listening, and we hope to have you back for the next one and all the other ones. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Paranormal Patio. As always, I am the Creep Master. I am Jason, and this is Hair Raising Horror Week. I don't know why I said that, the Creep Master. Adam?
You're a little creepy. Hi there.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I needed that boost today. I am a little
creepy in a good way.
Sure. And speaking of creepy in a good way, you know, we started out the podcast episodes for this week talking about goblins in Kentucky, right?
Yes, can't forget those goblins in Kentucky.
Josh Van Hook had a great story. I think everybody so far has enjoyed it. But I thought, let's go to, the goblins of Kentucky really started with the Hopkinsville encounter back in 1955. And if you want to get that story, you go to the source, right? So, granddaughter of one of the men who shot at these creatures, Geraldine Stith, is here with us tonight to talk about the Hopkinsville encounter. Oh, yeah.
I actually know who that is.
That's great.
That's really cool. That whole story is an awesome story. This is going to be great. I'm excited.
Yeah, and it's straight from the horse's mouth.
Yes. Get it right out of the horse's mouth. That case is super nuts.
This is the last time that we'll have you here for an intro. We've been joined with you all week. We've had your company.
It's been a blast.
What do you have going on? How can people find you if they don't already know? Tell us all the good stuff.
Well, check your 10 o'clock news. That's probably your safest bet. Depending on what town I'm in or where I'm live streaming. If you would like to find me, I'm on the YouTubes under the Paranormal Polynesian. That's very similar to the Paranormal Patio, so that's pretty easy to remember. You can find me on Patreon, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as Twitter and TikTok, so pretty much anywhere on the earth.
Pretty much
just everything. Look up the Paranormal Polynesian, and I have a wonderful, I won't oversell it. I have a pretty good channel where I go and travel the country looking at haunted and fun spots and eating my way from state to state. So I say come by and say hello. Tell them Jason sent you.
That's not fair. It is wonderful. You're not overselling it.
You've just got that Halloween spirit, I can tell. Thank you so much.
Loaded up with candy and multivitamins.
That's how I keep this girlish figure.
Hey, tomorrow we're actually going to have another live stream. This one's going to be for Patreons only, though, which that means you can watch it, Adam.
Ooh, yep.
So if you're interested, come on over to patreon.com/beyondthepatio. We're going to do a Patreon exclusive live stream. My patrons over there already know I've been working on building this little spirit box portal thing, right?
Yes.
And we're going to fire it up, and we're going to use it. And we're going to see if we can, get anything out of it. It'll be a good time.
That sounds awesome. I'll be there. What time is it again?
Oh, that's going to be at about 8 o'clock. Yeah, so check your local listings, I suppose. Yeah, 8 p.m. Central Time.
Yep, I just looked at my listing. It says it right here.
Right there in front of you this whole time.
That's awesome.
For real, it'll be fun.
No, it will be. I think that's really cool that you built that. I can't even build a funny joke. I don't know what's the last thing I built? A crippling wall of debt? No, I'm just kidding. Let's not go there tonight. We're having fun. It's Halloween. I don't know. Well, that's cool. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I hope you'll be there. I hope you'll, be able to have some fun with us tomorrow, because it's right up your alley, right? I mean, ghost hunting and trying to communicate with spirits. I mean,
I love those. I love to communicate with the spirits.
Hopefully we can get maybe we can get some sort of ultra-terrestrial intelligence to speak with us, you know? That'd be awesome.
As long as they're ultra.
Yes.
They must be ultra-terrestrial. You hear what I'm saying?
And, you know, a lot of people are afraid, you know, of being abducted by aliens, right? Extraterrestrials. As
they should. I mean, there's nothing to fear. Is that what I'm supposed to?
There's a whole class of people who are afraid they're going to be abducted by aliens and lose a limb. Like, get a limb taken from them. And for those people, I have a life pro tip. All you have to do, all right? And it doesn't just have to be aliens taking it. Like, if you're afraid that you're going to lose a limb, all you need to do is just drink unfiltered lizard blood daily, okay? And you can just get their regenerative properties, and you can regrow a lost limb, and you don't have to be afraid of it anymore.
I was gonna say something, but it's not appropriate, so I'm gonna move on to something else. That's a great tip, Jason, and one that I'll be sure to take to heart if I ever get abducted and lose a limb. Which I am terrified of aliens, so I really hope I do not get abducted. I'm gonna let you know that right now. I'm not having it.
Yeah, I think we all know, man. People that follow you and follow you even through my show, we know about, you know, all your crazy stuff that you've had happen over there. And I don't want to say I can't wait for the next time, because I don't want to encourage you to put yourself into danger. But I can't wait to hear the next time you get abducted. Like, I want to hear all about it.
Oh, well, you may be getting that chance very soon here, so I will let you know.
Teasing. You're teasing.
Ooh, I've got some things coming up. Don't you worry.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a secret.
That's awesome.
It's a spooky Halloween secret for everyone. But you'll just have to come check me out over wherever I am. Oh, wait. Where am I? Don't use any of
I'm using all of that.
Please.
No, it's perfect. Just fade that out as the music is fading up. No.
I'm Krista Coburn from Haunted Mitten, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm AJ. And you're listening to Paranormal Patio's Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Josh Bannock, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Geraldine Stith, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
Hi, this is Jill Shelley, owner of the Haunted Boyd House, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Tobias Wayland, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
I'm Stan Gordon, UFO researcher and author, and you're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
This is Bill Konkoleski, author of Experiencer Raised in Two Worlds and Experiencer 2, Two Worlds Collide. You're listening to Hair Raising Horror Week.
Welcome back to Paranormal Patio. As always, I'm Jason. My guest tonight is someone that I've been looking forward to speaking with for quite some time, and I think you'll all, if you're longtime listeners of the show, you'll know exactly who this wonderful woman is and her story, but we've never heard it on this show from her mouth, even though we've talked about it a few times at least in mention. Geraldine, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jason, for having me. I appreciate it.
I am really excited. I got in touch with you, I don't know, a couple months ago, I think, and I ordered a little statue and some books, and we kind of got this set up, and I've been looking forward to it ever since.
Yeah, my books and the little statue. The statue's so cute. I just love it.
Yep, he's sitting out here in my bookshelf. You've told your story probably 1,000 times, and I know you could probably recite the entire thing in your sleep, but...
Probably. I probably talk in my sleep. I probably do talk about it. My husband just doesn't tell me.
For those of us who haven't heard you tell it, would you indulge us all? And I know it's a lot. It's a lot to just drop on you, to just put the spotlight on you and let you tell your story. But I really would love, and I think my fans would really appreciate, to hear your story of the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter.
All right. Well, I will definitely give it my best. It's been a while. 2020 was really, oh my gosh, it was crazy because I was getting people contacting me right and left wanting to do interviews, podcasts, whatever, because, nobody could do anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my months were packed full. I mean, I was scheduling like crazy. And then all of a sudden it just dropped off. So you're actually the first one I have done in a while. So bear with me.
No, that's great.
Hopefully everything will start getting back together and we'll start, doing more conventions and things and get back in the role again. I hope.
I hope so too.
It's been so boring not being able to go out and get involved in all this stuff again, and hopefully we will. But as far as the story is concerned, of course, everybody knows it happened on August the 21st, 1955. Now, the people this happened to was my dad, my grandmother, and several aunts and uncles. And at the time, my dad was married to his first wife, and he worked in a carnival. So the weekend that this happened, the carnival he worked for was stationed in Evansville, which a couple hours from Kelly. Of course, it happened in Kelly, Kentucky, which everybody knows also. So that weekend, they decided to get away, come see, his mother and his other brothers and family, get away, get some good home cooking. Carnival's rough. It was rough back in the 50s, the 40s. You've seen the old movies and TV shows.
Sure.
And it was rough. So they got to come in. So they got to stay a couple of days, and Sunday evening rolled around. They knew they were going to have to head back, and it was my dad, his wife Vera, that came in, and they brought in Billy Ray Taylor and his wife June that worked in the carnival also. They were all really good friends, and my grandmother happened to know them too, so she was glad to see them all come in. So anyway, that Sunday evening, they were sitting around playing cards, just having a nice quiet time because they knew they were going to have to go back the next day. Billy Ray decided to go out to the well to get water. They didn't have plumbing. They did have electricity, but they did not have indoor plumbing. So he headed out to the well, and it had been a hot, dry August. Of course, we can relate to hot right now, but not the dry part.
Mm-hmm.
And he went out there to get some cool water from the well, and as he was standing there getting the water, he heard something. So he looked up to where he was hearing this noise, and lo and behold, flying across the air was this silver object, oval in shape, with what he described as the colors of the rainbow flowing behind it. Of course, he didn't know what it was. None of us would have. It kind of frightened him. He ran into the house, slammed the door behind him, and told everybody there is something out here. I don't know what it is, but it's something. Well, the first thing my dad and my grandmother and all of them thought was, all right, Billy Ray, being a young man in his early 20s, went out there, concocted this thing to scare the girls because they were all young. His wife was like only 18 or 19. And so that's exactly what they thought. Well, he kept on. My dad finally said, all right, let's walk out here and you tell me again what you saw. Because their reasoning was if you did see anything, maybe it was a shooting star or a meteor shower, because my grandmother had told them that there had been a lot of meteor showers that month. And of course, Billy Ray said, no, it's none of those. I've seen those. It's none of those. So they walk back out to the well. He points up toward the sky, tells my dad again what he saw. My dad tries to reason with him again about what the possibilities could have been. Billy Ray's like, no, it's none of those. And my dad tells him, says, well, there's nothing here now. Let's go back in and enjoy the rest of our quiet evening.
Right.
Because, they go back to that place tomorrow and work. And so they're heading back to the house as they are. The old hound dog runs by them, tail tucked, ears down, runs underneath the house. And they think that's kind of odd, but then they just blow it off. Well, maybe he just got to a beehive or something. But as they get closer to the house, they notice something coming from the back of the woods. They stop, they look. It's this little 3.5, maybe, foot tall being. A huge head, huge glowing eyes, big old ears, arms stretched all the way just almost touching the ground. And it seemed to float on top of the ground. Of course, they didn't know what this was. None of us would have. They both go running into the house, slam the door behind them. Now they're both telling them there's something out here. Of course, they're thinking, all right, Billy Ray done got my dad out there, which his nickname was Lucky. And so they done got Lucky out there to go along with his little scheme trying to scare the girls. So my grandmother told him, you need to stop this. I've got to get these kids to bed, because she had 3 young children that were 12, 10, and 7 at the time. My dad's siblings. My dad kept telling her, Mom, there is something out here. We just saw it. Well, she knew it was getting really serious when they both grabbed guns. One grabbed a rifle, one grabbed a shotgun, one went to the back door, and one went to the front. Everybody's still kind of like, oh, whatever, they're still trying to pull this off. My grandmother got thinking about it, and she thought, well, if I get anything out of anybody, it is going to be Billy Ray. So she goes to the back door where Billy Ray is. He's out there just looking, keeping an eagle eye out. She squats down there beside him, and she says, Billy Ray, can you tell me again what you saw out there? Did you, really see something? And he told her, he said, Miss Glennie, I don't know what that was, but I hope it's something that you never have to see. So they sat there in silence. They could hear all the talking and stuff going on in the house. And it's getting darker and darker, and all of a sudden, around the corner of the house from where my grandmother was sitting, came this little 3.5 foot tall being. She screams. She falls to the floor where she was squatting at. Everybody hears her scream. They come running out, to see what the problem was. And she told them, she says, there is something out here. I just saw it myself. About that time, they hear a shot ring out in the front of the house. My Uncle J.C. has shot one through the window. So Billy Ray, he goes running out the front door, standing there in the front door, and there's this little stoop over it. And as he's standing there, this little clawed hand reaches down to grab his hair. Well, my Aunt Eileen sees it, grabs him, yanks him in the house, and my dad runs out there, turns around, points toward where it was, and shoots at it. He hits it. It's there. He hits it. He hears it hit. It rolls, floats away. Well, somebody else screams there's one in the big tree, because he had these huge maple trees in the front yard. So he turns around, sure enough, sitting on one of the big branches was another one. Shoots it, hits it, it floats to the ground, rolls away. By the time it's all said and done, they're shooting these things. They shoot one off the back fence, and it's the same thing. They just get up, roll away. And they're hitting these. These are country boys that could shoot shotguns and rifles by the time they could walk, practically. They could shoot a rabbit running, they could shoot a squirrel out of a tree. Sure. They knew what they were doing. So they were hitting these 3.5 foot tall bodies, no doubt. Everything's getting crazy. The kids are crying. The women are crying. June, Billy Ray's wife, is just in hysterics. They don't know what to do. What are these things? They're definitely not killing them, because they're getting up and coming back. My dad finally just sets everybody down and tells them, says, listen, we're going to get in the trucks. We're going to head to Hopkinsville, and we're going to get help. Hopkinsville is like 7 miles from Kelly. They could get to the police station and get help. So they're sitting there in silence, waiting. And as they're sitting there, one goes across the tin roof, and you can hear its little nails going across the roof. Well, this really sends everybody into hysterics. June's about to lose it. The kids are crying. Nobody knows what to do. My dad finally calms everybody down again and tells them that it's going to be okay. We're going to get help. Just hold on. He gets them quiet again. They listen. They look out the windows. It seems like the coast is clear, so he says, let's go. So they hit the trucks. Head to Hopkinsville. All the way there, they're looking back, thinking, are these things following us? What are they? They get into Hopkinsville, run into the police station. Of course, this is 1955. One little officer on duty, because they didn't need a bunch back then,
Sure.
You got 11 people from the age of 7 to 50 running in to the police station in the middle of the night, trying to tell us one little officer what just happened. Of course, they're all into it. He's trying to understand what's going on. He can't get the story. He's like, what do you got little men attacking your farm? And my dad's trying to tell him, you're not understanding what we're trying to tell you. Finally, he decides, well, we'll just call the chief. So he calls up Chief Russell Greenwell, pulls him out of his sleep, tells him what's going on. The chief tells him, says, just keep him there. I'll be right there. He tells him, he says, call Fort Campbell. Fort Campbell Army Base was just down the road from Hopkinsville. So he said, call Fort Campbell, call the paper, call everybody you can. Let's get some people out there. So by the time it's all said and done, you got this caravan of vehicles running out to little bitty Kelly in the middle of the night, pitch black. Because, back then there wasn't street lights everywhere. And back then, Kelly may have had 50 people there, all sparsely out on farmland. So, there's not a lot there. But here they are, pulling up in their little road they have there beside the house. Clearly, something has happened to this place. It feels weird, for one, eerie. There's shotgun rifle shells all over the ground outside, inside the house, and there's holes and woodwork shot up inside the house. Clearly, something happened, but they searched everywhere they could. There was no bodies, no blood, no body parts, nothing to show whatever they were shooting at they hit. The only thing they saw was a glowing substance on the back fence. It was on the ground by the back fence where they had shot one. Some of the officers in one of the cars seen it as they were pulling up. So they, of course, got out, went there, looked. And when they walked up to it, it disappeared. You couldn't see it anymore. The only time you could see it is if you were away from it. So what was that? But, nothing was there. The chief told my grandmother, said, Miss Glennie, I'm so sorry, but there's nothing here. We can't do anything for you. So they left. They left the family there. So my grandmother got the kids settled down. Everybody tried to settle back down, lay down, tried to get back to sleep. My grandmother got in her bed. My dad sat by her in a rocking chair with a shotgun across his lap. And they were exhausted, mentally and physically exhausted. And she opens her eyes and she sees another one at the window again. So she's thinking, I'm just tired. That's all it is. She opens her eyes a second time. It's still standing there. The third time, it's still there. She yells at my dad and says, they're back. He jumps up and they start again, the gun battle. Well, they knew it wasn't going to do any good to go back to Hopkinsville, so they just waited it out till morning. The only saving grace they had, they figured, was the sun came up. When the sun came up, they disappeared. The only thing they could figure was their eyes were so big, maybe the sunlight hurt their eyes. That's the only thing they could figure. They were just glad they were gone. My dad set the family down, and he told them, listen, no good could come of this. He says, we need to go on with our lives. We need to forget this because I heard them laughing at us. They were laughing at us last night. So he said, let's just go on, plan our day like we were going to do and go on. There's a few of them that had to go do something. Of course, everybody had to leave, go back to work and everything. And my grandmother was left there. My dad and them went off to do something. And when they came back, they were bombarded. I mean, there were people there wanting interviews. They wanted to talk to the people. People were camping out in the yard because they wanted to see the little beings. They wanted them to come back. They were walking around picking up souvenirs. They were walking through the house and taking things. And it was just crazy. My grandmother didn't know what to do. She was afraid. I mean, you got to think. These things were coming at them and they were hitting them and nothing was happening to them. So what was she to do? My dad, Billy Ray, and the girls had to go back to work. All she was going to be left with was my Uncle J.C. and his wife Eileen, the 3 kids, and every once in a while O.P. Baker, which was my Aunt Eileen's brother, who would come by and stay the night sometime. She thought, well, they couldn't fend them off if they were to come back. And the thought was, they came for something, what they came back to get what they didn't get.
Right.
You know, so there was always that fear there. So my grandmother sold the farm within 2 weeks and moved into Hopkinsville in an apartment complex. So did my Uncle JC and Aunt Eileen. Sold it. Got away from it because she was scared to death. And that's what happened that night.
Wow. Actually, I didn't know that she sold the property within 2 weeks of this happening.
Yes, I actually went to the courthouse in Hopkinsville, and I got the deeds and everything from when, you know, the hands, you know, it passed down to, you know, who they bought it from, who bought it them, you know, bought it from them, and all that. Yeah, she sold it 2 weeks, but she sold it to family. And the thing is, the family that moved in there, of course, it was cousins, and the kids back then were scared to death. They did not want to move in that house. They did not want any part of it. But what do? You're a kid. You got to go where your parents go.
Yeah.
So they had no choice. But it was always that fear. And I think the people that lived in Kelly, because my mama at the time, she lived in Kelly also with her first husband. And they had 7 kids. And she said it was a fear. She said, because you did not know. Something happened that night. Something visited them. And if it didn't get they didn't get what they came for the first time, you know, that thought was always in their mind when they come back. And I think that fear stayed with my dad until the day he died, because I think he always thought, what if? You know, because they knew him. And I think he really was afraid that they would actually come back and finish up whatever they didn't get finished. You know, plus they shot at them. You know, if they shot at them, maybe they were mad. You know, they could have come back, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a fear.
Have there been any more encounters in the area? I know that there's been other reports of similar creatures, you know, across the whole state of Kentucky, but has there been anything else that's happened in the Kelly or Hopkinsville area?
Not that I know of, not like that.
Yeah.
If there was, nobody'd say anything, and I think a lot of people put off that, you know, you got Fort Campbell Army Base down the road, so they kind of think, okay, that's a light, that's something glowing, that's something, you know, it's Fort Campbell doing maneuvers. And I think they use that as an excuse when they do see things. And if they were to encounter anything, I don't think anybody would say anything because they're afraid to.
Yeah.
People are to say they've seen something like, even today, you know, even though it's more acceptable, I believe, now than it was, you know, 1955, you know, you were considered crazy, or you're on something, or you're drinking something, you know.
Yeah.
Things just don't happen like that. This is the Bible Belt. You don't do things like that. And that's one thing, too. That was one of the things that was brought up. My grandmother was very religious, and so, you know, they were called goblins. And she first thought, you know, what if these things are from the devil? You know, what if he brought them forth? Because she was a very religious woman. But, you know, it was later decided that, no, these were extraterrestrial, because after the fact, you know, people came forward and people saw lights and stuff during the day that day. That night before it hit Kelly, it was actually lights being seen. I know you don't know how this goes, but you got Clarksville, then you've got Fort Campbell, then you've got Hopkinsville, then you got Kelly. Well, if you start at Clarksville, different kind of lights and things were being seen all the way from Clarksville. They were going from Clarksville to Fort Campbell to Hopkinsville, all the way to Kelly. Lights were being seen, and nobody knew what they were. This didn't come up till after the fact. You know, after it calmed down some and people started talking about it more, because they were afraid to bring it up, and my dad wished it hadn't ever, you know, happened. He wished they hadn't went to Hopkinsville and asked for help, that they just gunned it out and forgot about it.
Could have went a different way, though, and not maybe the way he was hoping. Yeah.
It may have, you know, we'll never know, but.
Sure. I had read, and it's interesting with the mention that they had to go back to work in Evansville that next day. I had read a report somewhere online, and I've looked for it again since, and I can't find it. But there was a report that the same night that very similar looking creatures were spotted on a football field in Evansville, Indiana.
Oh, see, I had not heard of that.
I have to find this report again because I would like to go there just to see, because I'm really not that far away.
Right.
Probably equidistant between the two of us, but I need to.
Far either. Where we live right now, we're just down the road from Evansville. We're not far at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I actually go to Evansville. I wouldn't say regularly, but it's not uncommon. That's the biggest, if you want to call it city, it's the biggest city, I guess, closest. But yeah, that was interesting whenever I came across that, because it was the same day, or if it wasn't the same day, it was the same week. I mean, it was this 1955 in August, and after were the same.
Yes, and I haven't heard of that. So yeah, if you do find that, let me know, because I'd like to see that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure a lot of people would like to see that. And I know it's real. I know I saw it. I just can't remember when. And it was a while ago, like before I really started getting into researching and before the podcast had started. But yeah, it was just one of those random things that I had come across, just happenstance. But I thought that was interesting. Yeah, absolutely. So my next question is, obviously you weren't there. You hadn't come along.
No, not yet.
Have you had anything paranormal or weird or extraterrestrial happen to you? Have you had any encounters of your own?
Well, we've had paranormal things happen, not extraterrestrial, thank God. I've always said, what would I rather have or rather confront, a Bigfoot or an alien? And I think I'd rather have the Bigfoot, because I think I could take a shotgun and blow his head off easier than I could an alien if I had to. So, yeah, we've had a couple of paranormal things happen. That's really weird, but...
There's a lot of cases where this is almost like a hereditary thing, where something weird happens, and then the next generation, they have something weird happen. It's like it kind of interjects itself into a family tree almost, in a way. So I was curious.
I do conventions and stuff, and I know I had a ufologist tell me one time that because my family was visited by these little beings, that don't be surprised if sometime I get visited. And I told him, I said, I certainly hope not. I don't think I could handle it. I don't want to be visited by, I've always been scared of this kind of thing. And I wasn't scared of it until I heard the story, and we just happened to hear the story by luck. I guess you can call it luck, because my parents kept this story hid from us. They didn't tell us this. Even the older kids that, I said my mom had 7 kids from her first marriage. They knew this happened, especially the older ones, but they never talked about it. So they kept this really hid from us smaller kids. The way we found out was these people wanted to talk to my dad about it one day, and I was like 8 years old when that happened. These people come to the house, this man and woman came to our house on a Sunday afternoon, wanted to talk to my dad, and I guess my mom and dad thought, well, they're going to find out about it sometime, might as well do it now. And so set us down on the floor, and my dad told these people this story, and we heard it, and it scared me to death, and that killed me. Because I was 8 years old. I loved that type of stuff already. I loved ghost stories and horror and all that stuff. And back then, when I was growing up, this thing on the TV called The Big Show. And what it was movies. And most of the time, it was horror movies. It was the first alien movies that they made back then. It was the first, the island of Dr. Moreau and, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I loved that stuff. Well, after this story, it ruined me as far as the and stuff was concerned. It scared me to death. I would go around at night, close all the doors and windows and shades and whatever was on the windows, because I was afraid these little things were going to come back and they were going to be looking in at us. It scared me to death. And so it ruined my alien thing. Even to this day, kind of leery about going to see alien movies, or I didn't see Close Encounters till just a few years ago because I was scared to watch it. But I finally did. And, they're just scary because it's a scary thought to think something like that could really happen. And, like I said, I've been to conventions and stuff, and I've heard people talk about being abducted and stuff like that. And it's, oh my gosh, it's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. The alien thing scares me. My husband, thinks that I should be able just to sit and watch all these UFO shows and hear these people talk about this stuff. And I told him one day, I said, I cannot watch these things. They are terrifying to me. So I think now he realizes it, but, I can't because it's scary. I know what my family went through.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And on that subject, for those that were there that night in 1955, how many of them are still alive?
3.
And I assume the younger ones.
Yes.
So
yes.
Do they
12.
Do they have a pretty strong memory of that still? I mean, being young and being kind of traumatized like that, sometimes you kind of hide that memory in the back of your head.
The older one does, but he's getting close to 80 now, and he doesn't talk about it much anymore. I think he forgets things now because I've caught him forgetting certain things that he's talked about before. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't really talk about it anymore. The other 2, I think they have kind of just gotten rid of it out of their brain, because I say that because my Aunt Mary, she was only 7 when this happened. So she was practically, I think, a baby. We have the Kelly Festival every year, and every year I have to get up and tell a story, and I try to change it up a little. It's hard to change it up or do something different, but I try to do something. One year I decided to do it like a bedtime story. So what I did, I sat down, I typed it out like a bedtime story, and I was going to read it. My Aunt Mary never came to listen to me do that. I'm sure there was reasons for that, and I found out. Well, that year, just so happened she came at the wrong time, and I was up there doing my thing. I did the bedtime story. Well, when I got off that stage, she came up to me and she hugged me, and she was as white as a ghost. And she told me, she said, that scared me to death. She says it brought all that back. Mm. And she said, I'd forgotten it. And she said it brought it all back. And she said it terrified her. I seen it right then. That day made me realize, besides, my dad talking about it and seeing him go white, her remembering that and how she looked that day made me realize what they really, really went through that night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's too bad that it still has that strong of a reaction for them. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like, and hopefully I never have to experience anything like that myself.
Right.
I'd probably try to wash my hands of it too and forget about it.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people probably do that.
Yeah.
That happens too.
You've kind of become the voice of the story, even though you weren't there. What's it like for you to deal with the criticisms that come along with that? When people say that it's all made up and it's all baloney, how does that affect you on a personal level?
You would be amazed at the people that believe in this. At first, it was kind of crazy when I first started this. And the reason I even, I never had no dream of doing this. The reason I even got into it in the first place was back in 2005. It was the 50th anniversary, and Hopkinsville was having a 4-day convention. And they got in touch with me and asked if I would get involved to talk about it and all this stuff, let people ask questions and all that type of thing. And I'm like, sure, I'll give it a try. I'd never done anything like that before, but I thought, sure. That weekend made me find out that people did not know this story. They did not, there was a lot of things that were wrong. And even if you read it today, like there were 11 or 12 of them. Well, there wasn't 11 or 12 of them. My dad was very adamant about that. He always said it was 3 or 4. He said they shot them, they'd get up and come back. It wasn't 11 or 12 of them hanging on the house. It was just 3 or 4. You know, Billy Ray got abducted. Well, Billy Ray didn't get abducted. You know, and I've even read accounts where they had my dad's name wrong. Where they got Cecil, I have no idea. But in some stories you read, he's Cecil Sutton. Well, his name ain't Cecil Sutton. And different things. And I thought, well, you know what? If this is going to be out there, I need to do something about it if nobody else is. So that's when I decided to get down, did some research. Of course, I heard it from the horse's mouth, so I always had that in my head. Wrote that first book, and it took off. And I've been going with it ever since, and people absolutely love the story. It is very, very rare I get anybody questioning it. Very rare.
That surprises me.
Yeah, it does. You know, at first, you know, when Kelly started doing that festival, it was an iffy thing because there was a lot of people in Kelly that didn't want that to go on. It's gotten more accepting now because they were able to get that land and like that park and that firehouse and everything they've been able to do with it because of the festival. So now it's gotten more accepting and better. But yeah, you'd be amazed. I mean, and you know, I try to stay away from things that don't pertain to the paranormal or things like this because I have found out that, like we are in the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
I know I did a thing one year and it was a fair and I thought, well, I'll do this. So I did this fair and I had these 16, 17-year-old kids come up to my booth and tell me that I didn't believe in God because I believed in aliens. I said, hey, you can believe in both. Well, no, you can't either, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Whatever. You know, you just smile and just go on with it. But, you know, like I said, it's rare, very rare.
Well, that's good, I guess. I mean, whenever I learned about you from whatever path I was on at the time, I wondered how it affected you because I just knew people were probably constantly picking you apart and calling you a liar. And I'm relieved to know that that's not the case at all.
No, and the thing is, if they try, I can always jump back real quick. You know, always, you know, 'cause, you know, I'll bring this up. You know, the main thing what people like to bring up is that they were drunk that night. Well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but no, they weren't. They weren't. My grandmother didn't allow that in the house. They didn't have a still in the backyard. I mean, they searched the premises. I mean, it's in the police report. There was no alcohol on the premises that night, and they weren't drinking because they had more respect for my grandmother than that, you know.
Sure.
Not to do that in her house. You know, now, did my dad and them drink I'm sure they did at the carnival. You know, they were in their 20s. They were going to do things like that back then. But there at my grandmother's house, no. You know, people hate it when I can jump back at them. But I've learned, and I can do it. So I always tell them, you know, I've done interviews where they'll ask me, said, you don't care if we ask you anything? I'm nope. I said, you can ask me anything. I'll have you an answer.
Good for you.
You just have to learn to deal with the public like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I've said before, you've got this kind of story hanging on you, you know, and you're going to go out here and do it. You can't be thin-skinned. You've got to be tough to do this. You know, it's an alien story. So
I've always thought that if it were all made up, which I don't think is the case, I do believe the story. If it were all made up, there would have been a much greater attempt at trying to keep the story going at the time and trying to make some sort of money off it. Because what other motivation would there be besides to make it up to make money? I mean,
right.
Why else would, especially in that area in 1955, what other reason could you possibly have to make up that story?
Right. And that's what people realize too. And I think that's why this story is so credible. Another reason Chief Greenwell, he believed them wholeheartedly. He knew something happened that night. The evidence was there. There just wasn't any bodies or anything. You know, you don't shoot up your house, especially if you're a poor family that can't afford to have somebody come in there and fix your house back. You don't shoot up your house. You don't do that around your 3 small children. You don't go out in the middle of the night to the police station, 11 people, frantic, needing help. You don't do these things. You did not do that back in 55. You know, back then your name and your credibility meant everything. You did not do things like this.
Yeah.
You know, my dad, he was one of these people that he didn't lie. I mean, he did not do that. And he did not want his name dragged through the mud, for goodness sake. And so, no, you know, I try to tell people, we don't really know what happened that night. We don't know if it was paranormal. We don't know if it was extraterrestrial, but something happened. Something happened.
Mm-hmm. And going back, you just alluded again to, you know, the reports that were done. If I'm not mistaken, Project Blue Book came in to do some interviewing. Is that correct?
There was so many. They did. There is actually, I have a copy of the card, and it was just put away. They didn't do nothing with it. Of course, you know, the proper protocol wasn't done. Of course, the military came in the next morning, and they did go across the land, you know, did the thing where you walk across there shoulder to shoulder and went through the land. Mm-hmm. But they didn't rope off anything. They didn't get any samples of dirt. They didn't get, you know, that place where the glowing substance was. They didn't get anything from there. There was a spot found in the back of the field where the ship had landed, a perfectly round spot where it had been burnt. They didn't take anything from there. They just wanted it thrown away, forgot about, and just, you know, the best way they could do is to say, well, it's just a bunch of uneducated hillbillies, and they didn't see nothing that night. It was just mass hysteria or whatever, you know, they wanted to call it to get rid of it. They just didn't want anything more to do with it. Why did those little things land there? We don't know. I can tell you this, back in 68 or 69, whenever those people came to talk to my dad, the following weekend, my dad took us to Kelly because he wanted to show us where it all happened. And the house was still standing. Of course, it was dilapidated. The well is still there. It's still there to this day. He took us all the way back in the field, and lo and behold, I'll never forget it. There was this big round spot. And this was several years later that was still on the ground. There's nothing growing there. I mean, it was there. I saw it. So, you know, that put into perspective, you know, wow, something really did happen. You know, I was 8 years old, but I had enough sense to realize something happened here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So have you been back, you know, as an adult to the site?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we did a new show for Travel Channel back last July in 2020. We were finally able to get together. It was scheduled before that, but because of COVID, we had to wait. We did it with Ben Hansen, and the crew came in, and we did a show, and we actually went back in the woods. He was able to take the map that, you have that little white book that's got the map in it. Mm-hmm. And he was able to take that map and do the grid and figure out where that landed according to that map. And we were able to go back in there. It's grown up now. Of course, it's 66 years now?
Yeah.
But you could still tell there's a spot back in there. Of course, we kind of, the people that own that land don't want you to own it. So we kind of snuck back in there, which was easy to do because it's all grown up. You know, up where their house is now, you know, it's cleared off and nice, but so far from the backyard, all the way back in that field, it's just grown. So we were able to sneak back in there and do that. And they never knew anything about it. They don't watch his stuff. So anyway, you know, they don't want nothing to do with it. And so it was kind of funny, but yeah. But yeah, the well's still there, that spot, where we found, it was pretty interesting. That's the first time we'd found it, since 68, 69. Now there's people that were kids back then that have told me, yeah, that spot was there because I've walked across it, going back there hunting or whatever. So that's really, interesting to know that people actually knew that spot was there, but nobody cared to do anything about it. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
But everybody wanted to forget about it. Nobody wanted it to be there, So whatever. But, today, I wished we had it. I wished 1,000 times that I pressed my dad more about it. Now, of course, I was too scared to while he was alive. I didn't want nothing to do with it. But I wished I had him now, and I wished he had been able to take us back, because I'm sure he would have sweet-talked the people that lived on the land and let us go back there.
Has that TV show aired yet? Have I missed this?
Yeah, well, it's on Discovery Plus. If you've got Discovery Plus, you can see it. It's called UFO Witness, and it's the 4th episode.
Awesome. I'm gonna have to watch that.
They did a really good job with it. I like Ben. I've talked to Ben before. He's really good, and he really gets into that stuff. And when we met him that day to do that, he was really serious about it. He told me, he says, I'm I'm serious about this. He says, I'll do this right. He did a really good job with it.
That's great. I guess this isn't so much a question, but the last thing that I really want to say is that I love that this story became the genesis for the term little green men, despite the fact that the reports don't indicate that they were green. I love that came from a story like this, where it's a genuine story.
Yeah, I'm kind of proud of that too, because it's where the term little green men came from. That reporter just did that, well, little green men sounds better than little gray men. Plus you got the color Kelly green. And so it just kind of all just went together and absolutely worked. And I love it. I love that.
I used to speak with my grandmother whenever I was younger about aliens and UFOs, and she was really the only person that whenever I was, really young, that I had that would talk to me about things like that. And I was very interested. She would always use the term little green men. Whenever I found out that this is where that came from, it kind of made it a personal story for me too, in a way, because this is where it all started. And without it, who knows what my grandma would have called them.
There's no telling what they'd been called if that term hadn't come up. Oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about that. They could have been called hobgoblins or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
But, I love that fact. People don't realize that until, they hear it, and it's like, oh my gosh, really? That was from the killer aliens? I'm like, oh yeah.
Such a great story.
The reason people love it is because it's about a family. Okay, this was a family that didn't know any better. My grandmother and them didn't have the money to go to the movies. They didn't know this type of thing existed. Now, my dad, Billy Ray, may have, because they worked with the carnival. They probably went to the movies every now and then, seen things. I don't know. But, my grandmother and the kids and my Uncle JC, they had no clue about these things. The only communication they had was a radio. They had a radio. And then you talked to your neighbors. You went to church, and that was it. So, they knew nothing about aliens and extraterrestrials and all that type of thing. That's why they were called goblins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or my grandmother called them goblins. They look like little goblins. But, Russell Greenwell believed it wholeheartedly simply because he had an experience like 3 years before that. Maybe it's 53, a couple of years before that. And so he was a believer wholeheartedly because of his experience.
What was his experience?
Well, he was coming back home from seeing his sister. She lived on the lake, I think down at Lake Barkley. He was coming back to Hopkinsville, and there was cars stopped in the road. Just a line of cars. Well, of course, he stops, gets out like everybody else is, and they're all looking up toward the sky. So he looks, lo and behold, there's this thing hovering in the air, lights all around it and everything, just sitting there. And they sit there, and they sit there, and they sit there, and this thing just sits there, not moving. Finally, it just whooshes off across the sky. What was that? He believed because of that. They never knew what that was. Nobody ever figured it out. So,
that's really interesting. I didn't know about that.
There's all kinds of stories of people seeing things. I've got in my second book, there's a story in there about Mr. Smith, who him and one of his wives were coming home from the movie late one night. They got to their house, and there was this glowing object in the backyard. He thought at first it was just the moon. It was just a full moon that night. And he went out back, and he got to look at it, and he's like, that's not the moon. Got closer to it, and it was this big round object with lights, different colored lights all the way around it. And it hovered above his yard, up above his garage. And it stayed there a while. And he finally went in the house. His wife was already in bed. She didn't know nothing about it, and told her what was out there. And she just didn't care, I guess. But he'll never forget it, because it was this big glowing object. And then, he got out there and got to really looking at it. It had these different colored lights all the way around it. So what was that? There have been people that have had experiences. And that's another thing too. I like doing these conventions and festivals and stuff, because you have people come forward and they will talk to you about this type of thing, because you'll listen to them, or they know I will listen to them, and they won't. I don't think they're crazy. Well, I have heard some 4-out stories, let me tell you that, but they trust you in that. And so there have been a lot of people have a lot of experiences, but they're afraid to say anything because they're afraid they'll be laughed at, ridiculed.
So that does bring up a question for me now that you mentioned people telling you their stories. Have you heard anything from up around Livingston County in Kentucky?
I may have. I have heard so many stories over the years. I cannot keep them all in my head, but I may have. Who knows? If
you come across any, send them my way.
Livingston.
Yeah, Smithland.
Okay.
Specifically.
Smithland, okay.
It's just a point of personal research for me for the last 2 years. I'm actually working on a documentary about Smithland.
Oh, okay.
I had an experience there, but it's not an alien experience, and it's not really relevant to the conversation. But anything that happens around there that's kind of weird, I want to know about it. Not just from you, but from everybody.
We lived in Princeton, Kentucky for years, for 30-something years. And the last 9 years of that, I lived out we had a little farm. And, there's weird things that happen out there. And, I've had several people come and tell me, because we used to have a little shop in town. We had people would come in and talk to me all the time about experiences and stuff. And it's amazing, some of the stuff, Bigfoot stuff, lights, and weird things that's happened, in their backyards and stuff. I even had this one story where this family actually seen little beings that look like our beings in their backyard, So they've been seen by others. People just are afraid to talk about it.
I understand completely. I would talk about it just because I wouldn't be able to shut up about it for years probably. People would be tired of hearing me talk about it.
If I were to have an experience, you'd know about it.
Well, for your sake, I hope you don't. But if it ever does happen, I can't wait to hear the story. It could be the next book.
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely. If I had an experience, it definitely would be.
So, on the topic of your books, where can people find your books, and where can they find you online?
Well, I have a website. It's called alienlegacy1955.com. But most people just get a hold of me through my Etsy shop. because that's where all my stuff is, really. And my Etsy shop is aliens and goblins, all lowercase, scrunched together. You can get them all there. Of course, you can go on Amazon and get everything. Well, the books, but you get all my other little goodies in my Etsy shop. So,
and I encourage everyone to do so because the little goblin statues are just terrific.
Yeah, my brother does a terrific job on those. My brother makes those for me.
How does he feel about the whole thing, the whole story?
Oh my gosh. He'll talk about it every once in a while because he's like me. He's heard my dad talk about it. And he actually talked to our dad more about it than I did. Of course, he's younger, so he was home longer than I was. So, he would get more out of him. But I wouldn't talk to him about it either. If he talked about it, it was because somebody brought it up.
Yeah.
He started spouting off about it. But he doesn't mind it. Now, my younger sister, she had a hard time with it. She's gotten into it now, but she used to work in a factory in Hopkinsville, and they really, really hounded her about it, made fun about it and stuff. And so she really hated it for a long time, but now she has realized that it's a good thing for the community of Kelly. So she's gotten involved in it more now. Now, none of them will talk. They won't get up and speak. They leave that all to me. But, we did that little movie back in 2017 when the eclipse happened. We did that little movie, The Invasion of Kelly, with a couple of little local filmmakers, and it turned out really well. And that's another funny thing, too. That eclipse back then, it was going to be really long there in Hopkinsville and Kelly. So, they had thousands and thousands of people come to that year. It happened to be on the day of the festival.
Oh, wow.
It was the day of the 21st, was the day of the eclipse. It was the day of the alien invasion and all of it. And people were scared to death. I had people coming up to me 2 and 3 years ahead of the eclipse at the festival, talking to me about it, afraid they were going to come back during the eclipse. So, of course, at the festival that year, thousands of people were everywhere. It was incredible because people were thinking that they were going to come back.
Wow.
We had a film crew from Brazil there that did a fantastic documentary. Oh my gosh, it was good. They were there and other film crews were there, and it was just incredible that year. I wish we could do that every year, but that won't happen. If we have an eclipse every year on the 21st, it'd be nice, but no. But yeah, that was amazing that year. But people were actually afraid. There was people that were telling me they were not coming out of their house when that happened.
Wow.
Now, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the odds are. What are the odds that it would be the eclipse, the big like heavily promoted eclipse? Like we were, obviously we're about 4 hours away from that area, but it was on the tip of everybody's tongue here. Everybody who opened their mouth was about to say the words "path of totality." I swear, I heard it more times.
Yeah,
and. They were talking about, when the next one comes, we're going to be in the path of totality, and there's going to be people coming here, and I'm going to go ahead and rent some hotel rooms ahead of schedule and then sell them to people that are coming to watch the eclipse. And yeah, it was bonkers. But then for that to happen on the day, that's something. What a magical little moment.
It was incredible. We lucked up that year that happened on the day of.
And you guys are right there in the path of totality.
Yes, and it was beautiful. It was something else to see. I'm glad I got to see it.
Well, you'll get the next one.
Maybe.
All right. Well, I think this is where we're gonna end the show. I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about all this awesome stuff. I've had a really good time. I'm honored to be able to hear the story direct from you, and I will rest easy now.
Maybe they won't come get you.
Yeah. Well, if they bring me back, I'll let you know.
But if they come my way, I'll tell them to come see you.
Yeah, just send them north. We'll be good. We can handle them.
Okay.
All right.
Will.
You have a good night.
Thank you. You too, Jason.
Until next time, keep the fire going.